The first thing we're going to talk about is actually why you need a sales process. There are a lot of salespeople that think they don't need it. And so what we're going to talk about here are things that I've learned along the way, the last 15 years of my journey, things that I read out of books, taken out of courses, applied in the living rooms, from getting kicked in the teeth, punched in the gut through all of these years. So the first question I always like to ask is, what business are you in? We've been asking this for a long, long time, and the typical answer we get is, I'm in the real estate business, which is a very understandable response. However, I would argue that we are in the sales and marketing business. Nothing happens at all if people don't call you, right? If the phone's not ringing, you're not doing any business. I don't care how good you are at your job. So marketing first and foremost. After that, then we talk about sales, and that's where I come in. Marketing is pretty hard early part of your career, but if you're here right now, you've got that part figured out, right? It's just math and copy and paste. So really, what we're gonna focus on, again, is sales. And fortunately, sales is a skill that can be learned, it can be refined. It is not one of those things where you either got it or you don't. Now, before we get into it, I wanna share a little bit about myself. Why do I teach sales? The reason why I feel qualified to teach sales is because I was the worst at sales of anyone you ever met, right? I'm a graduate in engineering. I worked at Intel for 3.5 years. Or how many engineers do you know that are great at sales? Probably very few. And so it's because I was so bad at sales that I had to learn everything that was required to become good at sales. If you had Michael Jordan coaching a basketball team, he's not gonna be as good as a coach because he's not gonna be able to understand the challenges to become a great basketball player, right? So because I was so bad at sales, I actually am able to teach it because I had to engineer sales for myself. Another thing that happens as well as you're going through this material, what you may not realize is that your default selling style is how you buy. And so what we're gonna have to do is to modify some of your buying behavior so that you can improve your selling style. Now, when we talk about sales, there's a lot going on here. And one of those things going on that you may not realize is that there's a game that's being played. The homeowner is playing you and you have no idea that they're playing you. I'll give you an example here, right? They ask you to come over and you give them a number and they're offended, right? If you play the way that they want you to play, you're gonna be like Scotty in one of my favorite movies, Euro Trip. So if you've never seen the movie Euro Trip, what happens is his girlfriend Fiona shows up on his graduating day at high school. And she goes up to him and tells him, hey, we need to break up. And he asks why. And she says, I'm tired of all the lying, the cheating, the sneaking around behind each other's backs. And he looks at her dumbfounded and says, I'm not doing any of those things. And she says, I know, right? So what happens if you refuse to play the game, right? Like you might have said to yourself at some point, I don't want to play the dating game. If you're not gonna play the dating game, you might not get married, right? So what are some examples of things that occur when you're better than playing the game? Have you guys ever had a situation where you sent the envelope in DocuSign to the homeowner and they open the envelope and that's the last interaction you ever had with that homeowner, right? Or have you ever had a homeowner ask you for a number on the first 2 minutes on the phone or the first 5 minutes of the appointment and they're upset with your number, right? And they're upset with you. Or you had a homeowner say, you know, I really like your offer, let me think about it. And they seem really nice about it. And you built this amazing, amazing relationship and then you never hear from them again. And finally, have you ever had a situation where you open an email from another wholesaler and you look in there, it's like, wait a minute, I was at that house. That homeowner said they needed to think about it, right? So if that's happened to you, I've got bad news. It's your fault. Did you tell them? Yes, no, you're not allowed to think about it. Now, I know that sounds kind of harsh, a little abrasive. We're gonna be raising all sorts of sales resistance and talking to the homeowner when you do this. I'll share with you how we do this in a nice, professional, maximum courtesy delivery. As we go through this, as we go through our process, you're going to get a lot more no's. But in reality, what are we looking for? We're looking for a yes and a no, right? The best outcome of an appointment is a signed contract, right? Hands down. The second best outcome is a no. Because if you're not getting no's, you're not getting yeses, what are you getting? You're getting the follow-up game. You're getting the chase. You're getting all sorts of irritation and frustration. What is the process today, generally speaking, when you meet with a homeowner? They lie to you, steal from you, mislead you, and then ultimately hide from you. So what are some of these lies we get? I'm in no hurry to sell, right? House is in move-in ready condition. How about stealing? How many times have you gone to a homeowner's house? They ask you all these questions, right? And after all this time, because it takes you maybe 15 minutes to do the initial call, 10, 20 minutes to do the comps, 20, 30 minutes to drive to the house, an hour to run your consultation. And do they ever say, man, I am so grateful that you came over to my home. How much do I owe you for your time? Probably not very often. Or have you ever had a situation where you came over and they asked you what their house is worth, how much does it cost to replace the carpet, the paint, the AC, the roof, and so on? And at the very end, it's like, wow, thank you so much for this consultation. I really appreciate it. Probably not very often as well. And again, when we talk about this, we're talking about homeowners, I'm also actually talking about us. Because have we ever, right, gone into a store to buy a product, and at the end, instead of buying the product there, we checked it out online, made sure that the prices, reviews are still good, and you saw it was cheaper online and you bought it on your phone inside that store. Didn't that store have to pay a lease, utilities, insurance, employees, whatever it costs to get the items there? So we are actually also guilty of stealing, right, other people's resources. And then they mislead us, right? What are some of those things they'll say to mislead us? I like you, you seem really nice, let me think about it, sleep on it, pray on it, let me talk to my wife, my husband, my son, my daughter, my rich neighbor, my uncle, or maybe let me talk to my attorney, my accountant, my realtor, whatever they need to tell you for you to leave them alone. And finally, they hide from you, right? We call this the prospect protection program in our office. They just are impossible to get a hold of. It's like they fell off the face of the planet. Where I always laugh is when you call them from a different phone number and they answer and they get upset about that. So what do most home buyers do? Qualify, present, and then go for the close. So what are some things that will qualify? How much do you want for your house? How soon do you want to move? How's the condition of your home, right? Have you guys ever had anyone lie to you on any of these questions? Who are the decision makers, right? So those are questions that we'll ask to qualify somebody. And then we'll present or we'll educate, right? We're going to talk at them, like, here's what's going on in the market, here's what your house is worth, here's what other investors are doing, here's how the process works when we're buying your home. And we're spending all this time educating them. Why? Because if we educate them, then maybe they'll like us. And if they like us, they're going to work with us, right? In theory. Well, the reality is, once you educate them, you're giving them information, right? Which is nice of you. But is that why they asked you to come over? Did they ask you to come over for a consultation? Or did they ask you to help them out of a bad situation, right? Our job is to solve their problems, not to tell them how to solve their problems. And then we go for the close. And there's so many different ways to close. Some of us are closing too hard, some of us are closing too soft, right? There's the sit and stare, there's the assumptive close, there's the 4 boxes, there's the Benjamin Franklin close, all sorts of different closes. And the absolute worst close of all time is the one I'm guilty of, or I was guilty of back from my engineering days. Well, Mr. Homeowner, what do you think? And what's the natural conclusion of what do you think? I need to think about it. Completely shooting myself in the foot all this time, and I had no idea I was doing this to myself. So if we educate them and we talk to them and they lie to us when we qualify, and then when we present, they happily steal all our information, and when we go for the close, they mislead and hide from us, how's that situation working out for us? Probably not very well, right? So that's the reason why we want to close in the first 5, 10, 15 minutes of the appointment, telling them, yes, no, you're not allowed to think about it. And then we'll spend the rest of the time finding out all the reasons why they shouldn't work with us. And at the very end, if we make it there, we just walk out with a signed contract, right? If we haven't found any reasons why they shouldn't work with us, then the natural conclusion is they work with us. So while we talk about this, it might sound kind of weird to close in the first 5 to 15 minutes, right? The reason why we close in the first 5 to 15 minutes is because if we don't, what happens? We've got this steadily rising tension all throughout the appointment. You guys have felt it, right? There's too much pressure on yourself and there's too much pressure on the homeowner when we get to the very end. So we close in the very beginning to release any tension at all that we have at the appointment whatsoever. Now, have you ever played Battleship, right? Growing up as a kid. So when we're playing Battleship, right? When we're talking to the other homeowner, all the ships are exactly the pain they're going through. All the emotions that they're going through, what's keeping them up at night, right? And also what the ideal outcome is for them. If you could figure out exactly what's going on in their world and what the perfect outcome is for them, do you think at that time you've earned their business? That's our process, right? We want to, in the first 5 to 15 minutes, establish the rules, spend a good chunk of the appointment going through pain. Then we're going to figure out price, decision makers, time frame, and if we make it all the way to the very end, we just sign all the necessary documents, and then before we leave, we'll actually prevent any kind of remorse from showing up, because at the end of the day, is it important to get a signed contract, or is it important to get a signed contract that also shows up on closing day? Now, one of the things that I've gotten in trouble with saying this publicly, right, on social media is you cannot let a prospect think about it. Now that sounds crazy. Why would you not let a prospect think about it? If you talked to me 5 years ago, I would argue it's totally unfair to not let a prospect think about it. So why won't we let a prospect think about it? I want you to picture the last time we went camping. You all sat around in the campfire. It was nice, warm, toasty, right? And then as you left the campfire to go to your tent, it got a little cold, right? Got a little chilly. You lost all that warmth and toastiness from the campfire. When you're at an appointment, you're developing all this connection and emotions. And the moment you get in your car and drive away, it's the same exact thing as when you left the campfire, right? Why is this important? We know people buy emotionally and justify intellectually. Once we've driven away, we've lost all the emotions that's going to compel someone to take action. Additionally, are you familiar with the reticular activating system? The reticular activating system is something that, our body has, our brain can figure it out. We have so much information around us at all times that if we try to process everything around us, we would go crazy. So the reticular activating system is the reason why when you bought the car you drive right now, the 2 weeks prior to buying that car and the 2 weeks after buying the car, you saw that car everywhere. That's the reticular activating system at work. Why does this apply to our business? Well, you talk to a homeowner. You're at 150, they're at 150, everyone's happy. But they just want to think about it one more night. In that time, while they're thinking about it, they are totally primed, done by you, right? They're totally primed to accept a cash offer from a cold caller, text message, voicemail, direct mail piece, TV ad, whatever they see out there. Their brain is absorbing all of it, and they're going to talk to every single one of those persons like, well, I got an offer for 150, so why are you surprised when they accept an offer higher than 150? The other thing too is I want to make sure that you have the right mindset. Have you ever bought a property, or not a property, have you ever bought any product from a salesperson who had massive commission breath? So we have to operate with the right mindset. You got to operate like at $1 million in the bank, and you don't need the business. And I'm going to say some things here on this masterclass that might shift your thinking, might change your perspective. All I ask is that you give it a shot with the belief that it's going to work. We've had clients, again, for a long, long time, that the moment they believed it would work, they became much more effective in their sales process. And that's it. Hopefully by now, I've been able to at least convince you on why you need a selling system.